All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Fight Night Picks Kicks. As always, one half your co-hosting duo, Craig Allen. And listen, the show is brought to you today in part by Ringside Beer Store. Make sure you check them out, ringsidebeerstore.com. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 25% off your order. That's for Fight Night Picks fans only. They've got some awesome merch. Sometimes I wear their swag and their shirts. And hey, I've got a couple of tap handles here. The Ringside Brewing Co. Red MMA glove tap handle. You plug it in, you pull for your beer. And they've got a black one out that they just introduced last week. I've also got the boxing glove tap handle. So make sure you check them out, ringsidebeerstore.com. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 25% off of your order today. Another great Canadian company, Stardom Sports, out of Ontario, open since 1988. Make sure you give them a look. I mean, they've got a massive summer blowout sale going on right now. It's the end of the golf season. You can pick up some pretty good deals. I mean, a Nike Dry Fit Essential half-zip pullover, $44.99 Canadian, great deal. So make sure you give them a look at stardomsports.ca and check them out. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick onto any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minka Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clellan Farrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
It's time
for 15 minutes of non-stop MMA, tackling the biggest news in the sport. Head into the chat and let us know how you feel. Live from Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, here's your host, Craig Allen.
Oh boy, and another episode of Fight Night Picks Kicks, and I'm glad to be here this weekend live, hitting it up. There's a lot of people over in the chat. We got SAPT, we've got Branch Above, we've got Harrison, we've got Clint Briggs, we've got Gamerbod, and more and more and more. That chat is popping off. I'm going to be hopping in and out of the chat, but if you want to hit up the super chat, help out the show, but also you get it up there, it flashes up, and I have a better chance to see it because this chat's going to get really, really busy as we go through one of the busiest cards that you're going to have this year. We have 14 fights today, all of them very, very good. And listen, I'm excited about these ones. I mean, from Tyson Nam taking on Jerome Rivera in his UFC debut to some of the fights that are up near the top. Those last four fights, you got Chimaev, Meerschaert. That's a great fight. You've got Walker and Spann before that. In your co-main event, you've got Donald Cerrone taking on a really tough out in Niko Price, who it's either finished or get finished. And then in our main event, a fight that we were waiting for what, 2 years now? Between Colby, Covington, and Tyron Woodley. You can see it up there on screen. I'm excited about this one. Let's pop into the chat really quick. Oh, Jace is hanging out. Harley's hanging out. Ryan, loved the intro. Joshua Whitaker, let's go. Owen Smith saying, Sarah Alper for the win. I like your thoughts there. OJ saying, Habig is going to smash. Who else? McEon. We've got Jack Cowell, Whittick. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Branch Above. Everybody, really looking forward to this card. So if this is your first time with Fight Night Picks and with Kicks, the plan is what we're going to do. We're going to go through every single one of the fights in about an hour. We don't have a whole lot of time. I see Joaquin Franco is hanging out from Panama. Appreciate you. Fernando, a new fan. Google account. Well, that's mysterious. But yeah, it's a really good one. Owl Talent Trading. Oh boy. And SAPT once more. I'm really looking forward to this card. So, to get back into it, as we say, let's get into it. You go over to Fight Night Picks on Instagram, at Fight Night Picks. Yes, there's not a lot of people that follow us over there, but you can find us there. And what we do is we post these pictures. You can vote for your fighters. I'm going to talk about those votes on screen. It's a little bit of a fun nod to Tapology, where, we really reference those Tapology picks, but it's always great because you have 24 to 2,500 fighters every single time, fans voting on those fights. pretty good idea, especially if there's a lot of disparity in the odds. So like I said, appreciate everybody rocking in the chat. It's going nuts. I'm going to do my best to follow along with it. Let's see. Adams JATX. What's up, Craig? I'm interested in fights that don't go the distance. Well, you're probably going to get some of those today. Michael Mariano saying Woodley's got this. Craig saying I got to change my name, I guess. Well, that's a pretty good name. And David Robinson saying I followed today over on the Instagrams. I appreciate you. And YERRR, hype for this card. ER, the Pirate Steve. So let's get down and dirty into this card. So the first fight on our card, we have Tyson Nam taking on Jerome Rivera. You might recognize Jerome Rivera from this season of Dana White's Contender Series. I see Giovanni's hanging out from Montenegro. I've always wanted to go to Montenegro. Kotor looks like a pretty cool place, Montenegro. But we continue on. Jerome Rivera. So he's taken on a good fighter in Tyson Nam, and maybe you're not so high on Nam because his UFC record, maybe it isn't the best. I mean, he's got losses to Kai Kara France and Sergio Pettis, but those are two pretty good fighters. I mean, we talked about it in, our picks that came out to the start of the week, and we'll give you a little bit of inside baseball here because why not? I mean, I'm drinking water out of a baseball mug. I almost spilled on myself because we got a super chat, and let's see, Mr. Luxury hitting us up with a $5 super chat. A great night of fights, Craig. I've got a few million on Chimaev. Holy smokes! Wow. Well, that's a big vote of confidence on Khamzat Chimaev, and let's let the cat out of the bag. Yeah, I've got Chimaev over Meerschaert in this one as well. But to give you the inside baseball, yeah, I mean, traveling around for work, it's not as easy to split those videos up as you might think. There's a lot of editing that goes into them. So we threw it out there all in one to start. And then after that, last night, I had a little bit of time, i.e. 5 or 6 hours, to split them all up and post them. So hopefully everybody got to check out those videos. But to get back to this one, Tyson Nam, Jerome Rivera. I mean, Jerome Rivera, he is a sneaky fighter. 10-2. He had that loss to Roberto Sanchez in LFA. Sanchez gets a shot at the UFC. And then he had the fight against Brandon Royval where he's going back, fell on his arm, snapped his arm. But since then, nice 3-fight win streak, really big win by decision on Contender Series. Didn't get the opportunity to earn a contract, which is kind of strange, I guess. And then obviously ends up here. So the shot on short notice against Tyson Nam, who was originally supposed to be taking on Matt Schnell last weekend. Schnell was ready for a really tough out. And that's just what we get here. I mean, Schnell struggled with that weight cut, wasn't able to make it. And Tyson Nam just waits an extra week, gets Jerome Rivera. Fairly similar fights for Tyson Nam, Matt Schnell and Jerome Rivera. Rivera stands long. I wouldn't liken him to a guy like a Wonder Boy, just the way that he stands, but he does throw really nice kicks, which is an interesting thing because if you look at the majority of his wins, they are mostly by submission. So if we have a look over on Tapology, out of those votes at the end of the week, 80% of voters going with Tyson Nam at a 2,613, and in terms of the percentages of finish or not or decision, 62% predicting a finish for Tyson Nam. Bit of a surprise to me. Tyson Nam open to minus 165. A lot of props given, I guess, by odds makers to Jerome Rivera, who's coming in on short notice, making his UFC debut. Right now, Nam, he moved from 165. There was a point where he's minus 140. A lot of people got on Jerome Rivera early, and then that line dropped right off, and Tyson Nam at a minus 199 average. So, pretty interesting stuff there. Let's check into the chat. Owen Young saying Nam has had great bounce back ability. Dangerous guy. Great work as always, Craig. I appreciate you, Owen Young. Let's see. Eric Geeked Up saying he's got good leg kicks, but I think Nam's got what it takes to get inside and knock him out. Now, I don't know if he can knock him out, but I do like Tyson Nam in this fight. So I'm going to go with Tyson Nam and not changing my pick. Ryan is saying 11 losses. Yeah, but look at the competition that he faced outside of the UFC. You have to kind of consider that one there. And so we will continue on as planned. So if we look at our next fight, and even before we do that, look over on Instagram. Out of 209 total votes, we've got 116 for Tyson Nam. We got 34 for Jerome Rivera. In terms of percentages, 77% going with Tyson Nam. And I really like the comment right there. Nam just has too many tools and has that velocity factor. You're right. And Adams JATX saying Nam has like 90% of his wins from striking, whereas Rivera's mixed it up. I prefer the younger, well-rounded guy. look good at weigh-ins. They both look pretty good at weigh-ins as well. So we move into Andre Ewell taking on Erwin Rivera. This is a really good fight. In terms of fight of the night, I have this one pretty high up there. I know Andre Ewell had the neat hair, and then he had the hair metal hair, or the thrash metal hair when they weighed in. But kind of neat there. Andre Ewell, he's taken on kind of a mixed bag of competition so far in the UFC. Of course, you will remember his debut when he took on Renan Barão, and he ended up picking the win by split decision. He looked good in that fight. He really did. And a lot of people had Mr. Andre Ewell to win that one. And so you talk about fights on short notice. You look over at Erwin Rivera. He came in on short notice and fought a very tough out in Giga Chikadze, up a weight class. Gave a good account of himself, but didn't win it. Lucas is saying that Rivera sucks. I don't know about that, Lucas. I mean, you might want to watch some of his fights. He doesn't suck. He's got good top control if he can get the fight down to the ground. And he took on a really tough out in Ali Al-Khazi in his last time out. So I wouldn't say that he sucks. But Erwin Rivera, lot more of a mixed bag, of a fighter, if you will. And in a fight where, of course, as we always say with MMA, styles make fights, this is a really good one because if Erwin Rivera is going to win, you can see a clearly defined game plan. He's probably going to try and work in tight. He does have pretty good boxing in tight as well, but work in a clinch, take him down. Andre Ewell, oh boy. And I mean, who's more of a Swiss Army knife? That's a tough conversation. But you look at the stats, and I mean, Andre Ewell, little bit in terms of height, a lot of bit in terms of reach. I mean, he's got 8 inches of reach on Erwin Rivera, and he does use that length quite well. So that's kind of the tale for Andre Ewell. Now, he opened as a minus 160 favorite, and the line just dropped quite quickly, and now he sits at a minus 238. There was a lot of late money that came in on Andre Ewell as well, as of the last, the last 2-3 hours. So Erwin Rivera opens a plus 140. He's now around a plus 200. That stuff's going to happen. And I mean, it's a really interesting fight. Why Kenny's saying after betting on him against Ali Al-Khazi, I would not bet on him again because I think he loses to a step up in competition. That's true. AG saying Ewell is much more dangerous. White T Steve is saying Ewell is going to point fight if he's smart. Erwin has some strength and could hurt him if a good shot lands Ewell by points. I agree with all of you. If we look over on, if we look over on Instagram for these picks at Fight Night Picks, 118 picks for Andre Ewell. You got 40 votes for Erwin Rivera, so that's 75% of the popular vote for Andre Ewell. As I look over on my Instagrams, try not to bug you. So let's see. It could happen 21 saying even the picture doesn't cover his reach. Pa G saying, would you and your brother ever stream during the card? We used to do that a long time ago, but for 5 or 6 hours of talking, I'd much prefer sitting on my couch, having a couple of brews, and enjoying the fights. And then you can follow along with my reactions to Ed Herman beating Mike Rodriguez over on the Instagrams. I went nuts. So I'm looking forward to this fight. Like I said, I'm keeping my pick with Andre Ewell. And back here, again, I've got Tyson Nam in that first fight. So we move on to our next one. This is a great one. I expect to finish in this fight. You got Journey Newsom taking on Randy Costa. It's a really interesting one because Journey Newsom, I mean, he's one of those guys that has, really, really short in terms of reach. You can see that here. It's just like the Ewell fight against Rivera. So you get 67.5-inch reach for Journey Newsom. You've got 73 for Randy Costa. And you saw that from Randy Costa at the face-offs. He stood out really long like an old-timey boxer. Journey Newsom, a lot thicker in the arms. Randy Costa kind of looks more like my arms, just long and sneaky. Jorge saying, shout out New Brunswick, Canada, El Paso, Texas here. I love this card. Adams JATX saying Cody Safdie, and then Fight Night Picks are who I pay attention to all week. And they're both Canadian. I bet you got Laramie. You bet wrong. But we continue on. This should be a good fight because, and I can see it right there, AC Snakes saying Costas from Massachusetts. Gotta love it. AC Snakes. Great movie in Home Alone. Now, in terms of this fight, Journey Newsom in his last one, he actually really impressed me. It was a tough pick, and I kept it with, Domingo Plarte. Didn't change my pick. Journey Newsom proved me wrong, went in close, got a huge finish, and then pop for So that's a tough one there for Journey Newsom, especially if you're a big Journey Newsom fan. And it's tough to try and, pick against him. And in this one, you look at Randy Costa, a lot of people are really high on him, and for good reason. I mean, he's been able to finish opponent after opponent. I know he does have that one loss on his record, and you might sit there and scratch your head because you've got a fighter in Journey Newson, 12 pro fights. You got Randy Costa with 6. The loss to Brandon Davis, that's going to happen, and then he knocks out Boston Solomon. But how good is Boston Solomon? I mean, it's tough. Poor Boston. I just wish we got to see a little bit more of him in the UFC. But, it's a tough one to try and pick. And then the way that the odds shifted this week, it was really strange. It was because if you looked at it, Journey Newson opened as a plus 155 underdog, and all of a sudden that line shot right down and ended up at a minus 150 at one point, leveled off all week, and then a little bit of late money's come in on Randy Costa. But you got Journey Newson over on Best Fight Odds sitting at a minus 125. And for Randy Costa, almost said Randa Markos, opened as a minus 180. Now he's at a plus 103. It's always interesting when something like that happens. It makes me scratch my head a little bit because who knew what? I'm sure, somebody's got an algorithm there sitting on their computer, and if they can detect an inaccuracy like that, they're going to go with it. But for me, it's one that I might fade. I'm sticking with the pick of Journey Newson here, but it is an interesting fight. If you look over on Instagram, 67% of voters going with Randy Costa. That's 103 for Costa versus 56 for Newson. I think it's a great fight. I really like it. And I think it's going to be one of the better fights because you have to imagine both these guys. It's a striker's paradise, as we always like to say. Newson's going to have to close the gap, and Randy Costa's probably going to want to keep range. So it should be a good fight. Jace is saying Costa in the first few seconds. Holy smokes. What else do we have? Brainless Art, you're an absolute dingus, and see you later. And we continue on. So we look at our next fight. We've got Darrick Minner taking on TJ Laramie, the Canadian. I mean, TJ Laramie, what can you say? This guy's incredibly young at 22 years old, 12-3, and he's got a great shot at a win here. And odds makers really favoring him in his UFC debut. He's coming off an appearance on Dana White's Contender Series not that long ago. He opened as a minus 225, and all the money came in on him. And by all the money, I mean all the money came in on TJ Laramie. That line barely moved up whatsoever in the trend of things. So he opened a minus 225, now sitting at a minus 334. For Darrick Minner, opened as a plus 190, now sitting at a plus 262. And here's where it gets kind of freaky because you look at Darrick Minner, he's got a fair amount of losses on his record. Just like in our first fight, somebody had mentioned that Tyson Am, he has 11 losses. Darrick Minner also has 11 losses. And I noticed somebody in the comments under this video, just the separate video on its own, that said TJ Laramie's taken on the tougher competition on the regional scene. I wasn't going to fight you on that one, but I mean, no. You look at the two guys that he fought, with I'd say more experience records, especially his fight on Contender Series. He also fought a Brazilian over in TKO with a decent record. So the Daniel Swain fight, who was 29-1, and then it was Joao. Let's see who it was. I should know. Joao Luis Nogueira, that was 25-6. The majority of those guys, or the majority of his wins for Nogueira, were against guys that didn't have Tapology pages, guys that, it's a padded record overall. So that is what it is. TJ Laramie, and I like the point made by Lorthos Legend saying Laramie's too strong and has really good wrestling. That's true, but Darrick Minner has really good jiu-jitsu. And you gotta call a spade at this point. I mean, 24 professional wins. You look at the fights that he had over on the regional scene. I mean, yeah, he lost to Herbert Burns. Yes, he lost to Grant Dawson. He lost to Kevin Kroom that you saw in the UFC. He lost to Jordan Griffin. He lost to Jesse Arnett too, but he lost to Luke Sanders. So he's faced that upper level of competition all the way through in the regional scene for the longest of times. He turned pro back in 2012. Like I said, 24 pro wins, 21 of them by submission. Does that mean that TJ Laramie's going to win and Darrick Minner isn't? Does that mean that Minner's going to win and TJ Laramie isn't? This is a fight that I would fade just because you saw those odds just fall so far down on TJ Laramie. And I just think that Darrick Minner has a good shot in this one. I honestly do. I know it's a wild underdog pick. I'm looking over on the Instagrams. Out of 217 total votes, 94 for TJ Laramie, 71 for Darrick Minner. That's good for 57% for TJ Laramie. And like I said, odds are all over Laramie. If I look over on Tapology, to 2,753 votes, 86% on Laramie. That's good for 52% of those voters picking him by knockout or TKO. I think it's a great fight. I know Bailey's saying that if this stays standing, rip Minner. I think you're right. Let's see what else. Corbett saying to take Minner. We'll continue on. Logan Cherry saying it's a fight. I think it's a really good fight. Joe Sue saying what pick is your lock of the night? If you know Fight Night picks, I'm not doing a lock of the night. And Ryan saying holding up that TKO belt, because if these guys don't have pictures, I have to go off of something. So it's usually the Instagrams. I'll find a picture, and the TKO picture works. So that's one that I went with. So we'll continue on this card. We look at Jessica Rose Clark and Sarah Alper. So I mean, I had the underdog in Minner in the last fight, and in this one, I'm also going with another underdog. I'm going with Sarah Alper in this fight. I know that Matt and I both picked her, and a lot of people thought that it was kind of wild that we went with an underdog like this. And I understand, because Jessica Rose Clark, she's A, fought good competition or recognizable names, but B, has a huge following on not just the Instagrams, but all over social media. So Jessica Rose Clark, one of the more well-known fighters, especially at 135 pounds, whereas Sarah Alper, a lot of people might not be familiar with her. I know she didn't look the greatest when she actually physically weighed in on the scale, but man, you could notice it when they were staring off, or they did a little bit of the stare down. Sarah Alper, a much bigger fighter at 135 pounds. I see Logan Cherry saying Alper didn't look great at the weigh-ins, and I get it. But I like Sarah Alper in this fight, especially when the odds have her and they continue to gain for Jessica Rose Clark. So Alper opened a plus 145. She's now at a plus 176 according to Best Fight Odds. If you look over at Jessica Rose Clark, opened a minus 170, dropped down really quick, and dropped down some more at the end of the week, and now she's at a minus 214. And it should be a good fight. Like I said, I mean, Sarah Alper, really good wrestling, and that's kind of, not that it's been the Achilles heel of Jessica Rose Clark, because she does have good jiu-jitsu, and she most likely has the better striking. But if Alper can just get her down to the mat and hold her down and continue to move and move and move, I think she should be able to get the win. Lorthos is saying Alper is a superior wrestler. Logan's saying gas tank to Rose Clark, but what happens if Alper is able to take her down? It might not happen. But I think it's a really good fight, and again, I'm going with the underdog. So two fairly decent sized underdogs back to back. If I look over on Instagram at 214 votes, 83 going with Jessica Rose Clark, and 65 going with Sarah Alper. And James says, why does Alper look like my aunt at Thanksgiving? Your aunt fights in the UFC. Who is she? And B, this is the picture that they had from Dana White's Contender Series, and it was all I could find that actually looked half decent, and it doesn't really give a good representation of poor Sarah Alper. But again, I'm going with Sarah Alper. So we move on to Mayra Buena Silva and Mara Romero Barella. And listen, they've been calling Mara Romero Barella Mara Barello this week, so I'll go with Mara Barello, but I'm still going to call Mayra Buena Silva by her name. Now, Mayra Buena Silva picked up a huge win in her UFC debut, and it's one of those wins that really makes you scratch your head, because where do you seed somebody like Mayra Buena Silva when you beat Jillian Robertson almost 2 years ago? Well, they wait about 7 months, put her up against Marina Moroz, and she struggled because Moroz it was just volume. Matt likes to talk about certain fighters all the time. That's one of them in a really tough out, not Mayra Buena Silva, holy crow, and Marina Moroz, and she was able to get a big win there in that fight, and it was a fight of the night. It was a really fun fight for Mara Romero Barella, and I see Lorthos the Legend saying Barella live dog. That's the only thing that I've seen you put down so far that I disagree with. Really, I do, because I look at Mara Romero Barella, and I know the last 5 fights has been bad. So you go to the first one, Caitlin Chukagian loses a decision. Caitlin Chukagian always fights a decision, or typically. A great fight in her last time out against Shevchenko. Antonina, that is. So she loses that one. She beats Tyler Santos by split decision. She loses to Lauren Murphy. She loses to Montana De La Rosa. She loses to Courtney Casey. The fight against Montana De La Rosa was a good fight for Mara Romero Barella. She had some chances. She didn't give a terrible account of herself. But in her last time out against Courtney Casey, it was bad. It was just bad. It did not go all that well. So I'm sticking with the pick of Mayra Buena Silva. I mean, coming out of Shoot the Box in Brazil, a great gym. She's got a lot of things that worked very well for her, and I think she'll be able to get the win. I see Lucas saying she's desperate for a win. There's a lot of people that are desperate for a win. I mean, you got Cowboy Cerrone that doesn't want to lose 5 in a row. He's desperate. I think everybody here is desperate for a win because you want to make an impact before the fights go over to Fight Island, and you definitely want to fight over there. So I've got Maida Buena Silva. If I look over at the odds, I'll give them to you quickly. Let's see. Maida Buena Silva is a big favorite. I mean, she opened a minus 330. That line crept up during the week for Mara Borello, and then now you got Buena Silva drop back down again. She's a minus 262 average on best fight odds. For Mara Romero Borello, open to plus 270. She's now at a plus 212. So like I said, taking Maida Buena Silva in this one, I think it's a good one. Over on Instagram, out of the votes, 108, well, it changed, 115 for Maida Buena Silva to 38 for Mara Romero Borella. It doesn't seem like Mara Romero Borella is, much of a favorite over on Instagram. So we move on to our next fight, and this is a fight that we didn't get the chance to preview earlier on in the week. We talked all about Meerschaert Backtick taking on Eduardo Garagori, which seemed like a weird bit of matchmaking. Garagori out, so now you get Damon Jackson returning to the UFC. Had a bit of a weird run to start it off. The old 0-1-1-1 had a no contest where he got finished, but there was some banned diuretics by his opponent. He had a no contest, and he had a loss. This is a guy that has a lot of experience on the regional scene, and if you ever watch the Damon Jackson fight, he typically sets up his submissions because out of all of those pro wins, a large majority coming by submission. He's had a few really neat fights in his last little bit, and I went back and watched a number of them before today, wrote down quite a bit of notes on them, but the fights that really stuck out to me, the Nate Jennerman fight with LFA a couple of years ago, and the Moro Cholet fight that he had in his last time out. And I know I usually try to pronounce him as best I can, the Brazilian Mauro Cholet, but he picked up a big submission win in that fight in his last time out. And it was a really weird one. It really was because, he just went full bore with the striking, cracked him hard with the right hand, got it down to the ground, got his back, and choked him out. And the Nate Jennerman fight, he just went full send in that one and absolutely wrecked house and looked great. And then if you look at that loss, that was 2019's PFL knockout of the year for Mavlid Haibulaev. And holy smokes, 10-second. Damon Jackson went in, and Kabulaev came up with a flying knee and hit him right square in the chin and knocked him out totally. Like, it was one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen. But Damon Jackson, what he's been doing, setting up the submissions with the striking, I don't see that happening against Meerschaert Backtick. I mean, this could be a chance like where Kevin Kroom came in and beat Roosevelt Roberts, but I don't see Damon Jackson get a win. I don't see him getting the win here. I know he trains at a Fortis MMA, great gym. You got Ryan Spann on this card. Jeff Neal would be another guy from the gym, and we could go on and on about Saif Soud's gym that's just absolutely wrecking it. But if you look at the odds, I mean, Meerschaert Backtick opened to minus 275. That line dropped really, really quick. He's now a minus 362 average, and Damon Jackson plus 235 open, now at a plus 284. Yeah, I mean, I've got Meerschaert Backtick. Just about everybody's got Meerschaert Backtick over on Instagram. And of 217 votes, you got 131 for Meerschaert Backtick. You got 27 for a really tough out in Damon Jackson. All right, so let's have a look over in the chat. It seems like a lot of people going with Backtick in this one. Just my 2 cents. How's it going? OJ saying Backtick in the first round. Barclay, you still got Minner? Yep, I've still got Minner. Chase Collins, can I get a shout out with the Mazzo pick last week though? I mean, I said Mazzo would probably win, but I'm going to stick with the pick of Justine Kish. And hey, Kish looked good. Kish looked good for a bit. But that's 16-1 2 weeks before. Ended up 6-6 last week, and that just sucked. So we got to get back on the horse here, and we will continue on down the lane. So we look at Jordan Espinoza taking on David Dvorak, and I know a lot of people really high on David Dvorak, and so am I. And I chopped that video up a little bit. I posted that throwback in our overall picks for this fight because David Dvorak coming into the UFC, really well-rounded, good striking, really good forward pressure. If he was ever in trouble up against the cage, he could kind of sneak out of certain positions. He did a really good job in a lot of his regional fights and fought really good competition. It's tough to find good fights at 125, 135, and to have a record of, 17-3 coming into the UFC. It's tough to do that for a fighter, especially overseas. So great job for David Dvorak. He's a Swiss Army knife. He puts on really good fights. And I like this one because Jordan Espinoza, you know how good the wrestling is. You know if he lets his hands go, it can be sparks. And this is one of those fights that you really deliver. And I'm actually, I kind of want to fade this one. I'm sticking with the pick of David Dvorak. I see just my 2 cents saying Dvorak, and it's one of my least confident. Clint has Espinoza. Bailey's saying flyweights never die. That's how we always start our flyweights videos. Let's see. Lorthos is saying, I like Dvorak, but a pick'em line is fishy. I agree with you. And RW saying, I think Jordan backs himself up to the fence too much. And Pasa is saying, hello, bro. How's it going? Really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Busy show today, and the chat just continues to get crazy. So keep hitting up that chat. Hit up the super chat if you want your comment to flash up. It's a little bit easier for me to see as well. So I'm sticking with the pick of David Dvorak. Now, if we look over at the odds, like it was mentioned earlier, pretty much a pick 'em. I mean, Espinoza opened up the underdog at a plus 145. Now around the minus 113 mark. Dvorak went from a minus 170 to a minus 110. So for everybody saying that they have David Dvorak, the money's coming in on Jordan Espinoza. If we look over on Instagram and we let the picks load up, there's 107 for Dvorak to 54 for Jordan Espinoza. That's good for 66% for David Dvorak. Now we go back over into the chat. Lucas is saying Dvorak is in a 14-fight win streak. That much is true. Alexander Ryan saying Dvorak's going to finish. Chris Blanchard, Dvorak's going to win. Alex V is saying Dvorak's going to get into the top 15. Well, again, like I said in the video, there's only like 16 and a half fighters in the UFC's flyweight division. So I'm sticking with David Dvorak. I'm going to have a sip of water. We're going to hear from Vertiball really quick, and we'll keep this train rolling. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada, so make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick onto any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup, can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minka Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clellan Farrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it. I mean, what can I say? I was muted. Everybody said I was muted. I'm just a donkey. I mute myself when I'm drinking my water. And yeah, this is a possible fight of the night, as everybody tells me that I'm muted, and it is what it is. So we continue on, and now I'm not muted. So simmer down. Whoa, whoa. Easy, easy. This is a really fun fight. So Kevin Holland is so dynamic, especially at 185 pounds. I mean, you don't have many fighters that are long like this. And it is tough. I mean, it's tough for a lot of people to beat a guy like Kevin Holland. You look over at Darren Stewart, he's able to just rip and rip and rip and push a pace and take people down. I mean, Kevin Holland does a great job at a lot of different things, and so does Darren Stewart. And if you looked at Darren Stewart in his last fight, I mean, look what he did against Maki Pitolo. He looked amazing. I mean, he was able to set things up with his hands and really go to town and get a quick finish in that one. And for Kevin Holland, you look at the losses, and a lot of people are worried about it because both these guys, 5 losses. Both these guys, you know, in their last 5 fights, Holland 4-1. You look at Darren Stewart, he's 3-2. I mean, Holland, that one loss to Brendan Allen, it's a tough one. It is, but it was one of those fights where he was winning until he wasn't. He cracked Brendan Allen. If that fight continued to go along, it would have been all day for Kevin Holland, but Brendan Allen able to use his very, very slick jiu-jitsu that you've seen so far in the UFC, the former LFA champ, and pick up the win. But again, Kevin Holland, I mean, what can we say? Let me know in the chat. He's beat Gerald Meerschaert by split decision. He beat Alessio Di Chirico. He loses that one to Allen. He beats Fluffy Anthony Hernandez, and he beats Joaquin Buckley, who came in on short notice. And for Darren Stewart, the split decision loss to Edmund Shabazian, very close. It really was. He beat Bevon Lewis quite handily. Beat Duran Win by split decision. That was a good fight because you're taking on a really good wrestler. Lost to Bartosz Fabinski. It was bad. And then beat a really tough out, like I said, in Maki Pitolo. So it's a tough one. Sam Myers saying anyone on Stewart's going to be very disappointed. I don't think so. Kevin Holland, and you can see it on the graphic, that reach stat is crazy. I mean, it is. And Darren Stewart, you would have to think for him to get the win, he's got to clinch, he's got to push that pace, and he's got to try and take the fight to the ground. The only trouble is Kevin Holland, black belt in jiu-jitsu, he's been a Travis Lutter guy for a really long time. He's got that kung fu background. His striking's very good. And like I said, I mean, he has great hands, lots of snap on the end of his shots, which is good. And if he's able to employ the kicks, I think he has a really good chance at picking up a win here. I'm excited about this fight. This is a possible fight of the night. It should be a lot of fun. And I like what Corbett actually has to say right there, saying at the face-off, Stewart didn't look that much smaller than Holland. You're right. Alexander Ryan taking Stewart on DK. And if I look over the picks on Instagram, this is the one where I scratch my head, everybody. I mean, really. 152 votes for Kevin Holland to 21 for Darren Stewart. That's good for 88% on Holland. I think that's way too much for Kevin Holland. If you look over at the odds, I think they're skewed too. I mean, Kevin Holland opened a minus 265 favorite. The line went up in favor of Darren Stewart and then crept back down. Minus 283 is where Kevin Holland's at right now. Darren Stewart's at a plus 228 on a weird line. And I apologize when I started that I was muted. I mean, rookie mistake, but I was quenching my thirst and getting ready for this great card. And it's so exciting. Sometimes you're just going to forget stuff, I guess. Now, we continue on to our next fight. We got MacKenzie Dern against the, I guess you could say, the adopted Canadian in Randa Markos, fighting out of Windsor, Ontario. I mentioned it in our video to start the week. I know Randa Markos said this week in her media interviews that she wasn't going to try and wrestle. Her striking, kind of herky-jerky, keeps her arms out, keeps her head kind of in. And, people have reached out in the DMs and said, oh, well, Randa Markos has better striking than MacKenzie Dern. And that might be true, but Hannah Cifers, in terms of who's a better boxer, Hannah Cifers or MacKenzie Dern? You might laugh at me because I know Hannah Cifers didn't have a good run in the UFC, but Hannah Cifers, striking-wise, is probably a better pure striker than MacKenzie Dern. So that is what it is. And yeah, I mean, you just have to go the way of the striking. So a lot of people going with Randa Markos, and a lot of people, and I say a lot of people, but more and more people going with MacKenzie Dern. And we know the submission abilities. Let's bring up the props on this one just to have a look. So MacKenzie Dern favored, I wouldn't say slightly. She opened as a minus 330. That line crept up incredibly quickly. And now MacKenzie Dern a minus 180. So from 330 to 180, that makes you scratch your head. If you look at Dern by submission, let's see where it is. This is kind of tough to find. Dern by submission, open is plus 165. It's now plus 143. So there have been people going with Dern by submission during the week. Let's head into the chat very quickly. Chase saying Cifers is terrible. I mean, but hey. Nopin is saying Markos is the Lobov of women's MMA because she wins some and loses some. And yeah, Dern trains with Perillo now. Yeah, so if you're training with Jason Perillo in terms of your boxing, that's probably going to help out. You know how accredited she is in terms of grappling. The thing that makes me kind of worry a little bit about Randa Markos is where you cross train at 3 different gyms, 2 of them in Canada and 1 of them in the States, and you can't drive over to the States and train, full time anymore. Kind of worries me a little bit. I know Randa Markos alternates wins and losses with a draw in there, but I'm taking MacKenzie Dern in this one, and if I look over on Instagram at Fight Night Picks, 141 votes for Dern to 29 for Markos. That's good for 83% for MacKenzie Dern. And Ballaholic, yeah, you're right. That would happen. Stefan, Fight Night Dance? Fight Night Boogie? That's a weird little emoji. And we continue on now. The last 3 fights, we got about 20 minutes to go through these, and then we're going to whip through the final picks. So stick around if you get the opportunity. But Johnny Walker taking on Ryan Spann. This is one where it's been going back and forth in my head all week because Johnny Walker, such a quick finisher in the UFC. he just burst onto the scene, looked absolutely amazing, made a huge name for himself, incredibly quick. I know he has that record of 17-5, and, you know, the loss to, who do you have one? Klidson Abreu back 5 years ago by submission. It worried a lot of people. He comes into the UFC. The Khalil Roundtree fight was awesome. The Justin Ledet fight was awesome. The Meerschaert fight was awesome. And if Misha was able to kind of work his game plan in, probably would have went the same way that the Krylov fight did, but Johnny Walker went in there very quickly and got the win. Then he loses to Beaston 25-8, and then he loses to Nikita Krylov. And for Ryan Spann, he's on a nice, very nice win streak, actually. I was going to say nice little win streak, but Ryan Spann's on a really good win streak, dating back to his loss in 2017 to Karl Roberson. Now, I see a lot of people are going with Johnny Walker over in the comments. I see GamerBod saying, Spann, if this goes past the first round, Walker gets lucky with the weird movement. The fight that worries me a little bit, and I see it here, Corbett saying Spann's grappling ability is the difference. I think watching Pereira last week got people excited to see Walker again. I think you're right. You look at the fight that Ryan Spann had in his last loss, the one on Contender Series Season 1 against Karl Roberson, and he cracked Roberson. Roberson kind of, whether he slipped or it was a knockdown, he kind of fell back. He stood back up. Ryan Spann gets him, pushes him up against the cage, and has his head tilted down, and Roberson lands a couple of really nice elbows. It might have been 3 or 4 really nice elbows. Hit him down, got him down, and the referee, it was Jason Herzog, who's one of the best referees out there, quite honestly, if we're all honest. Called the end of the fight. Was it a little early? Probably not, but it may be. I mean, you could make the argument. But a great win for Robertson, and for Ryan Spann went back to the drawing board, and he hasn't lost since. Now, his last fight against Sam Alvey was terrible, and I'm sure, let's see, Martin D, Spann had a hard time with Alvey. He did. His cardio looked really bad in that fight. Before that, Ryan Spann looked amazing, but he didn't look good in his last fight. Now, he did win it, so this is a fight that I definitely consider a fade. I wouldn't touch this one. I know the odds are really close. If we look over on best fight odds, and let's see. Johnny Walker, slight favorite, the line opened as a pick'em. A ton of quick money came in on Walker, and then it evened back out. He's a minus 133 average. If we look over at Ryan Spann, opened as a minus 102. He's at a plus 110. So it's pretty good. Matt the Mick, oh boy, appreciate you with the super chat, the $9.99. Keep on keeping. Life's a garden. Dig it. Oh boy, you are the GOAT, and Clint Briggs is appreciating you as well. Holy smokes, the words are a little different. Virgil F saying Ryan looked very nervous at the weigh-ins. Yeah, because he had to take shorts off the weigh-in, and it's crazy to think that because he used to be a middleweight. Can you imagine you're a middleweight and you got to fight a guy that's 6'5" and has an insane reach of 79 inches? That'd be crazy. So I think this is one of those fights where you just sit back, you pull up your Mookie Betts ball bat. That's a weird thing to say. Your ball mug. And it's one of those ones where you just enjoy it. Because this is such a good fight. And I'm going to stick with the pick of Ryan Spann. It's not the most confident pick on the card. You got 132 votes on Instagram for Johnny Walker. And you've got 47 for Ryan Spann. And if we head into the comments, Martin D, Craig Allen is a real BMF. I don't know about that, but I will tell you something while I get everybody on the line, Martin D included. It could happen 21 saying Red Sox fan. What if I'm a Dodgers fan? No, I am a Red Sox fan. The merch. I got the Fight Night Picks hoodie on, but I made a new merch order and it should show up close to the end of this month. I'm traveling in the next couple of weeks, so the videos are going to have us split up. But yeah, I've got merch coming in, so we're going to get that. FightNightPicks.net is the website. We're not using it a ton, but I think you're going to see more and more neat content coming out shortly, and you're going to be able to find the merch in the store over there. So, like I said, I've got Spann over Walker, and then in the next one, and NYT is saying waiting for Khamzat Chimaev versus Gerald Meerschaert. Well, we've got 18 minutes left. Khamzat Chimaev, Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert is not an easy fight, and everybody's saying it's easy, but it's not. Come on. Be realistic. I mean, somebody said under the video that Gerald Meerschaert's run-of-the-mill jiu-jitsu or average jiu-jitsu. Holy smokes, no way, Jose. I mean, Gerald Meerschaert, 31 wins to 13 losses. He's a mainstay at Rufus Sport and one of the guys that they look on and really depend on for his jiu-jitsu abilities. And he's a great training partner for a lot of the good fighters that you have there. I mean, think of the talent. Anthony Pettis, Sergio Pettis. You've got Bilal Muhammad, Paul Felder, Tyron Woodley's trained there in the past, Gerald Meerschaert, and so on and so forth. Now, That being said, for Gerald Meerschaert, I see Mathieu Malikov saying I put 300 on Chimaev TKO, but damn, I mean, I don't know. Khamzat Chimaev. The other people, in the comments, Chimaev's a white belt. Do you think that mattered in his other fights? I mean, did you watch his fights? It doesn't matter if you're a white belt. If you can haul people down and tie both arms behind their back and slap them in the face with their hands, you know how silly that sounded for me to say? It was very silly. It was. But Khamzat Chimaev is a very good fighter. And I think this is a really good opportunity for Gerald Meerschaert to get a win. And on the same token, Khamzat Chimaev needs to win this fight if you're going to match him up against Damian Maia. And I see that fight is no longer on his Tapology page. Very interesting. But Khamzat Chimaev, absolute phenom at this point. One of the brightest stars in the entire game. And that's what makes this incredibly interesting. So if we look over at the odds, that's where it got funky fresh, like we like to say, because Khamzat Chimaev opened to minus 500. Late money came in on Meerschaert later on in the week, I should say, and then dropped back down, and Chimaev's about a minus 500 again. And for Gerald Meerschaert, opened to plus 385, and then ended up plus 372 today. So Manasa Remy hitting us up in the super chat. I really appreciate it. Matt never apologized to Shannon Dobson on Twitter. I can make that happen. I will make that happen. And I'll tell him to do it. So let's continue on. And we look at the votes over on Instagram. 156 for Chimaev to 26 for Meerschaert. Yikes. I mean, this is one of those fights that why would you even bother with a minus 500 in Chimaev? You just sit here, you enjoy the fight, and if Meerschaert wins, kudos to him. I mean, I think he has a much better shot than John Phillips. He's got a much better shot than Reese McKee does. And it's a great fight. I mean, Gerald Meerschaert, we typically pick Meerschaert to win. So I think it should be a good one. He's not an easy out for anybody. And I mean, if you look at his losses, he's only got 2 losses by knockout in his career. Yes, they were somewhat recent. And yes, one of them was in his last fight against Ian Heinisch. But hey, these are good fighters, and I think it's a great one. Timo's hanging out. Craig looking good again today. I'm not wearing, the denim on denim this week, but you can't always wear denim on denim, and it didn't work for me last weekend. Nopin is saying Chimaev is hype train. Yeah, Chimaev time, just like it was no time for Volkan Oezdemir. So let's move into our co-main event of the evening, and this is where I'm changing my pick. I'm going with Niko Price. And let me tell you why. Donald Cerrone in his last 5 fights, he's fought very, very good competition. The fight against Anthony Pettis was very competitive. The fight against Conor McGregor was how a fight against Conor McGregor is probably going to go. Might have been a little surprising with the shoulder checks, but it hasn't gone well for Donald Cerrone. Maybe slowing as he gets older. That's one of those things that you have to worry about. And they always show like Cerrone highlights, but they don't show WEC ones. They'll show UFC ones, and he's had great fights even somewhat lately because he fights so often. But yeah, I mean, Cerrone, I don't see him winning this one because Niko Price, the only thing he had to change from his last fight against Vicente Luque, you remember that fight against Vicente Luque? You remember Luque too? So, first round, Luque wins. Sets it up with the kicks. Second round, gets a little closer, Luque wins. Third round, Niko Price starts to chop away at the leg. Luque switches stances. Niko Price picking up the pace. Go back and look at the stats. His striking started to go up, but his eyeball, the area around his eye kind of blew up. Doctor stoppage due to TKO. And that's just the way that it ended. And I see over here, Cowboy's chance if he gets it to the ground and submits him, but Price, it's not like he gets submitted. He's lost by submission once to Vicente Luque, but again, Luque's a top opponent here, and Will's saying that if Cowboy's chin holds up, he's going to win a decision. I don't see it anymore. I see John Gotti saying, don't switch your pick, Cowboy's going to go for a highlight. I think he will. He has to. You can't just lose 5 fights in a row and just drop right off the face of the earth. But I don't see Cowboy Cerrone winning this one against Niko Price. I'm switching the pick. I'm going to go with Price here in agreement with old Matt Allen of all people. And I'm going to go with Price here. I had to watch a lot more tape on this one, and it gave it, it gave me a good impression. Look, you go back and watch the Tim Means fight. Tim Means is hitting Niko Price hard. And Niko Price gets hit a lot because his head doesn't move a ton. Donald Cerrone gets hit too, and that's the thing that worries me. Niko Price, a lot less miles on the tank at this point, and I think Price is going to be able to get the win. And then we look at our main event of the evening, Tyron Woodley taking on Colby Covington as we approach 700 people watching the show at once. I appreciate everybody for watching. It's been a weird week. It's been a great week, and hopefully you're able to check out some of those pick'em videos. But Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley is such an interesting fight that probably should have happened 2 years ago. And it's interesting because Covington comes out in the red corner, Woodley in the blue corner. And just 2 years ago, 2 years and a little bit, Tyron Woodley was your champion, a red corner guy. Colby Covington, interim champ, blue corner. Now we have a bit of a switch because Tyron Woodley, I mean, he's lost to Usman. He lost to Gilbert Burns. And they just didn't... it wasn't that account of Tyron Woodley that you would want to see. And for me, I talked about it in the prediction video, and I'm as honest as I can be. The fact that when I was getting into MMA, Tyron Woodley was one of those guys that I really enjoyed watching. I mean, the knockouts, the wrestling. He really brought everything to the table. The fight against Josh Koscheck. Who liked Josh Koscheck back then? He was a heel. Nobody did. Tyron Woodley had a huge win there. The fight against Robbie Lawler. How crazy was that? I mean, he looked great. And just my 2 cents is 2 years ago, I would have picked Woodley. Based on performances, I would have as well. But the trouble is, we haven't seen that Tyron Woodley in his last 2 fights at all. And when you're this far into your 30s, it makes me worry, can Tyron Woodley put together a throwback performance? Now, he lost his 10 rounds. I know. There's a lot of people that aren't high on Tyron Woodley right now. And I get it. It's just difficult to try and think that Tyron Woodley is going to put together one of those nights where... And if you remember those fights, he either pushed a pace or he got backed up and he was able to counter-strike. And he couldn't do that against Usman. He couldn't do that against Burns. He got taken down. His takedown defense is starting to go down, and he's had some of the best takedown defense in MMA in the entire division. He's right up at the top. He's number 1. So it's something that I worry about. With Colby Covington, the weird thing about him, he hasn't really done a lot of interviews. He hasn't. And, oh, smokes. Does that mean that at MMA Masters, Colby Covington's really found the secret sauce and he's not doing the interviews and he's really putting such a focus on the training? I don't know. So with Covington, you know what you're going to get. You could get You're either going to get chain wrestling or really, really volume-heavy type of offense. And that's, it's usually going to be one of the two. It's a head-scratcher with Woodley, and that's why Woodley opened as a plus 210. He's now at a plus 266 over in best fight odds. For Covington, open as minus 250, down to a minus 338. And if we have a look over on Instagram, 138 votes for Covington to 52 for Woodley. That's 73% on Colby Covington. So I'm going to keep the pick with Colby Covington. I'm not going to dive into this one a little bit too much, but I just don't see it for Tyron Woodley. And I really like Tyron Woodley. I think he's one of the better welterweights that we've had to see, or we've been able to see here recently. But yeah, I really do like Tyron Woodley. I mean, he's right up there with some of the greats of all time at welterweight. And for Colby Covington, he's trying to get to that point. And a win like this would really mean a lot because you beat a former champion in a fight to settle some bad blood. And it could be a really fun one. So, just taking it for the fight that it is, I've got Colby Covington. So now what we're going to do, we're going to whip back through, have a look all the way down to the bottom. Boom, boom, boom. Could have done this a little bit smoother, but we're going to hit it at the bottom and go all the way back to the top. It's 5:52. We get 8 minutes left before the fights. Justin's saying that he's a better predictor than I am and just blasting it out there. Maybe you are. It doesn't matter to me. You're not going to hurt my feelings, but let's have a look at this. So I've got Tyson getting the win over Jerome Rivera. That should be a fun fight to kick off the card. I've got Andre Ewell to beat Erwin Rivera. Another really fun one. I've got Newson to beat Costa. That's an interesting one. I've got Minner to beat Laramie. I like the fact that Derrick Minner is that big of an underdog, and I think it's a good fight. If Laramie gets the win, kudos to him, because that's a big name and somebody that has a lot of fights on his record. And for Laramie, that's another good stepping stone for him. I made a mistake. I've got Alper to beat Jessica Rose Clark. Again, a fun fight, but Alper, as big of an underdog as she is in the wrestling she possesses, if she can really pick up a nice pace early and get the fight to the mat, I think she has a good opportunity to win. I've got Mayra Buena Silva to get the win over Mara Romero Barella. I've got Meerschaert Backtick over Damon Jackson, who's coming in on short notice, looking like a skinny Ross Hilton. I've got David Dvorak over Jordan Espinoza, but I don't like those odds at Pick'em. I mean, I like Dvorak a lot, but I think Espinoza has a very good chance at winning this one as well. So that's one of those fades. I'm just really looking forward to the fight. Kevin Holland over Darren Stewart. That's another really fun fight. You just eat your popcorn and enjoy it. I've got MacKenzie Dern over Randa Markos. I've got Ryan Spann over Johnny Walker. Another one of those ones. I'm just going to eat my popcorn and enjoy it for what it's worth. I've got Chimaev over Gerald Meerschaert. I've got Niko Price, the pick switch from earlier on in the week, over Donald Cerrone. And I've got Covington over Woodley. I'm really looking forward to this one. There's a lot in the chat, and I appreciate everybody for tuning in. It's crazy how big this show's grown week over week, so I appreciate everybody for tuning into Question Mark Kicks, checking out a lot of the fights. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far this week. Next week might be a little difficult in terms of editing everything together because I'm going to be traveling again, working out of a hotel room and doing my best. But yeah, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoy the fights. And yeah, we'll catch you again for a huge pay-per-view from Fight Island. I mean, Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. It should be a great one. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Without further ado, your fights are coming up, so let's get into it.
It's time
For 15 minutes of non-stop MMA, tackling the biggest news in the sport. Head into the chat and let us know how you feel. Live from Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, here's your host,